Greetings everybody. I'd like to share with you a spreadsheet setup that you can use to calculate what your returns might be if you invested a certain amount of money in inverse ETFs. Inverse ETFs go up when the markets go down, and they go down when the markets go up. The reason some people like inverse ETFs is because if the market and most of your stocks have a down day, a down week, or a down month, your inverse ETF will be gaining money. What we must decide and figure out, however, is how much you want your inverse ETF to gain or lose relative to the rest of your portfolio. That's where a spreadsheet like this comes in. Let's start with a simple example. At the top, we have the amount invested. Here you put in how much total money you want to have invested in stocks and your inverse ETF. Let's say we have $5,000 we're willing to work with. On the left, we see stocks and 1x inverse ETF. 1x means if the stocks go up by 1%, the inverse ETF goes down by 1%, and vice versa. The dollars invested and gain-loss columns will auto-calculate based on the numbers we put in the percentage invested and percent returned columns. So watch this. Let's say we wanted to put 75% of our money in stocks and 25% in the inverse ETF. The dollars invested column auto-calculates because its formula references the $5,000 and the percentages. If we view it this way, you can see what their formulas are. It's the percentages they have to the left of them times the amount invested. If you're very new to using formulas, what you have to do is click on the first box underneath dollars invested. It'll be blank the first time you click in it. Type the equal sign, then click on the $5,000 box, put the times symbol, and then click on the percentage box to the left. Press enter and it will calculate. Do the same for the box beneath it until your formulas look like this. One thing to note, however, is that depending on which cells you use to set up your table, the letters you see in the formula might be different. For example, my first formula says B1 times B4 because that's the location of the boxes they're referencing. But your formula may say B2 or B3 or C5 or wherever you set up the table. Okay, so back to the results. We see that if I want to be 75% stocks, I need to put $3,750 into stocks. And being 25% in an inverse ETF would mean $1,250 invested. Now let's see what our returns would be with this setup. Let's say my stocks lost -5%. That means the 1 times inverse gains 5%. And the loss on stocks is $187. And the gain on the inverse is $62. For a total loss of $125. The usefulness of a table like this is you can start changing the percentages to see different results. So if I said I wanted to be 65% stocks and 35% inverse, these are the new results. Then you can start keeping track of or comparing scenarios until you find one you'd like your portfolio to be like. The formula for the gain-loss column is the percentage return to the left of it multiplied by the dollars invested to the left of that. The last two formulas you can choose to set up are the ones that add the percentages together and the ones that add your gains and losses. Just type in equals and click one of the boxes above it, put a plus sign, and then click the other box above it and press enter. Now you have a basic setup to run scenarios to show how your portfolio might perform with certain allocations among stocks and inverse ETFs. Of course, because we're working with stocks, the percentage returns you get with the inverse ETF will not actually be the exact inverse of your stock returns but it could be a good general ballpark estimate. The only way to get almost an exact inverse return would be if instead of having stocks, you had an ETF that tracks an index like the S&P 500 and then have the inverse ETF for the S&P 500. Also, if you really want to be more exact about it before you invest in an inverse ETF, you could take note of how your portfolio performs on a particular day and compare it to an inverse ETF's percentage return for that same day and calculate from there how much you would need to invest in the inverse ETF to get your desired results. But again, this spreadsheet and video here is a real basic starting point. I may create additional videos where we discuss using inverse ETFs with 2 times and 3 times the results, as well as including ETFs that go with the market that are also 2 times and 3 times amplified.